none of the conceptual ways of talking about the truth are the truth. They're all pointers. They're all different ways to point at something that can only be experienced. It can't be spoken of. It can't be conceptually understood. So the understanding can only take us so far. But it's still useful, because if we understand what's going on and we understand what's possible and we understand that this possibility is real and that any human being can experience this truth, and this truth will set you free, this truth will allow you to experience the relief of being anxious, the relief of being fearful, the relief of being angry, the relief of being concerned. That's the experience that people talk about when they have what's typically spoken of as an awakening. But even that is just a conceptual way of talking about something. There's no real awakening. That's a way of talking about something from the position of personality. You could say if you're being a personality, that you woke up to your true nature as awareness, right? But the reality of it is, a personality can't wake up, because a personality doesn't exist. So what we call waking up is really just letting go of the identification with that which isn't real. And when you let go of the identification with that which isn't real, it becomes possible to notice what has always been real but unnoticed. Always been real but unseen. And this is what becomes available to see when we move away from the conceptual way of understanding things. So one of the ways that I talked about meditation today when we did our practice is to say we're practicing allowing ourselves to let go. We're practicing ourselves to let go and allow ourselves to be awareness, letting go, allowing ourselves to rest as this awareness. Now, obviously, in order for you to do that, you have to know the difference between awareness and the personality, right? You have to know the difference between awareness and the thinking process, right? So if that's not clear for you, then get clear about that first, right? And it should not be that difficult, because if I ask any one of you if you're aware, the obvious answer that you will give me is yes. And if you're going to answer that question by saying yes, it means that somehow you know that's so. Somehow you're aware that awareness is the case. You may have stopped for a moment and looked to see, oh, yeah, there's awareness here. Or isn't it obvious that I'm aware? If I wasn't aware, how could I be here? But you need to distinguish awareness in order to practice. You need to have the distinction awareness as a real, in existence presence, not just a concept. It won't work just as a concept, right? So until and unless you have that distinction, stay with that. Noticing the body breathing has you oriented to the present moment, and then the awareness that's aware of the body breathing allows you to have a sense of reality, to have a sense of what's real, have a sense of what the truth is, that's non-conceptual. And so we can focus on that. Or we can, another way to say it that's more useful and practical is we can let go of what's not that, so that that is evident. We can let go of thinking so that what's there without it is evident and obvious. And don't worry about conceptualizing it. Don't worry about naming it. Just distinguish it. Allow yourself to recognize that it's ever present. It's never not here. And there's nothing easier than allowing yourself to rest as awareness. Since the awareness is already here, all you have to let go. All you have to do is let go. It's like floating in water. All you have to do is let go and relax, and the body rises to the surface, right? It's the same kind of thing. Just let go and relax and allow yourself to experience, allow the experience of awareness to be the experience that you're resting in. So the practice of formal meditation is practicing that. You get it? You're practicing that. You're setting aside a specific period of time every day to practicing that. And that's no different than practicing swimming, playing basketball, practicing driving a car, practicing anything. You're practicing that. When you get sufficiently practiced in that, where you're clear about the distinction of awareness, so that you can actually let go and rest in awareness, rest as awareness. Then, in addition to the formal practice, you can begin to practice informally. Right? And the informal practice of meditation, the informal practice of resting as awareness, has been spoken of by many of the teachers. One of the teachers that has taken to speak on that and focused on it as a primary approach to experiencing the truth was named Candace O'Denver. Right? I haven't talked that much about her. Right? She is a Sogen teacher. Sogen is a high form, it's a sect in Buddhism. Right? And so she has been trained in this form of Buddhism. And years ago, she created a movement that she called the balanced view. You can do your own research on this. It's on the internet and everything, the balanced view. And it's now an organization and so forth, and it has a teaching, and she's the teacher. And what she teaches is very simple. What she teaches is this: let awareness be as it is for short moments, repeated many times, in all kinds of situations until it becomes natural. Let me say that again. Let awareness be as it is. In other words, allow yourself to rest as awareness. Let awareness be as it is for short moments, repeated many times, in all kinds of situations until it becomes natural. So this is her teaching, and she doesn't even get involved, as far as I can tell, although she probably has it in her history, she doesn't get involved in formal meditation all that much. She says, if you just practice this, and you do it with sincerity, and you do it with earnestness, and you do it with an absolute commitment, that during the day, right, as many, and I've talked about this in a different way before, right? I've said during the day, as many times as you can remember, check and see if the awareness is there. That's kind of the same thing, okay? But she's saying when you're practicing this, to be as the awareness and rest as the awareness, and repeat this as many times for short moments. You don't have to do it for a long time, right? So during the day, for example, you could wake up in the morning and you could train yourself to remember the first thing before you do anything after you wake up and sit on the side of the bed is to allow yourself to experience being as awareness, resting as awareness, just for a few moments. And then get up and start doing whatever you're doing. And then maybe when you're having your coffee, you remember again. And so you take a few moments and just notice resting as awareness. That which is not moving, that which is always here, that which doesn't need or want anything, rest as that. If you continue to do this, right, for short moments, repeat it as many times as you can, as many times as you remember every day, in all situations, right? So this doesn't say only do this when you're sitting in stillness and silence. It doesn't say that. It says you can do this in all situations. You can do this when you feel good. You can do this when you feel bad. You can do this when you're driving a car. You can do this when you're talking to people, if you get better at it, through practice, right? And if you do it in all situations, repeated for short moments as many times as you can remember, so remembering it becomes a practice. Just remembering to do it becomes a practice. And if you remember to do it, the more times you remember to do it during the day, the more times you will do it during the day. And if you keep doing this over time, what you're doing is you're creating more of an experience of the truth. You're creating more of an experience of the actual. You're creating more of an experience of what's actually alive and real. You're not creating it, you know, you're making yourself available to it. More and more, making yourself available to it. And it doesn't have to be created because it's already there, right? What does have to be created is the thought process that generates the personality. Okay? This doesn't have to be created, it's already there. So all you have to do is allow yourself to rest as this awareness, even for a brief period of time, and keep doing this for short moments, repeated as many times as possible under all situations. And by doing this over and over again, what starts to happen is this experience of being the awareness begins to start to expand, It begins to take on a life of its own. It begins to happen more and more. You begin to remember more and more to do it without the high intention anymore. It starts to just become what you do. You know, you begin to do it more and more without even, you know, struggling to remember to do it. And as you continue to do it more and more, it begins to expand more and more, right? And if you stay with this over time, eventually you'll be able to stay as the awareness, rest as the awareness for 5 minutes. Eventually be able to rest as the awareness for a half an hour. Eventually be able to rest as awareness for a day. Eventually be able to rest as awareness for a week. And then at some point, it becomes irrelevant. At some point, awareness is the natural way that you are, right? And that becomes your baseline. That becomes your ground of existence, right? It becomes your ground of being, is the natural state. Okay? And one of the things that's important to understand about this, it's not in conflict with everything else that's happening. It can happen simultaneously to everything else that's happening. Okay? So you can experience being the awareness and at the same time being the personality. You can experience being the awareness and the personality at the same time, so that which had been dualistic becomes non-dual. When you're the awareness and the personality at the same time. So I'm being the personality, but I know I'm being the personality because I'm being the awareness being the personality. You get it? I'm thinking, but I know I'm thinking because I'm being the awareness that's aware of the thinking. That's a whole new world. That's a whole new world. That's a whole new world. That's a whole different world, right? And it has a life of its own. If you practice this consistently, it has a life of its own. And Candace O'Denver called this the balanced view. She called it the balanced view. Why is it the balanced view? I've talked about balance here, right? It's balanced because now which was out of balance, which is the personality, was way out of balance with the awareness. And most people who were totally identified with the personality didn't even have a clue about the awareness. So by practicing this, what happens, that which was out of balance comes into balance. And what it means that it's into balance is I am now the awareness and the personality. They're not out of balance anymore. And the reason that I can come into balance and the reason they can be balanced is because they're the same thing. They're the same thing. The personality is the awareness manifest in form. The awareness manifest in time and space. The awareness manifest in the form of a body and the personality. That's what's happening. Right? But without the balance, you know, without the practice or without the experience of resting as awareness, right, there is no balance. Then you're in the form of the personality in the body all the time. And because that's way out of balance and disconnected from its essential reality, the suffering happens. Now, there is a yearning or a sense of something missing, a desire to be happy. Because happiness isn't here. because the foundation of the existence of the personality is missing. And that foundation is what we call happiness or peace. But that's not in existence if you're completely identified with the personality, which is the awareness, but it's the awareness being the personality. It's the form. It's the form. Does this make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So this is what it's all about. This is the practice of meditation is a formal practice, but the intention of the formal practice is for it to become informal, and then the informal practice to become natural. And when it becomes natural, you're experiencing the fulfillment of the possibility of being human. Because when it becomes natural, instead of your being a human being, you see, human being, human first, that's personality, personality being, right? Instead of being personality being, human being, you're being human. That's the right order, right? You're being human. First you exist as a being, first you exist as awareness, and then you're being human. See, if you understand this the way I'm speaking of it right now, it opens up a further possibility in the sense that in the beginning we were talking about you're not the personality, to try and get you to start to experience the truth, the whole nature of reality by saying you're not the personality. Yeah? But that was what Rupert Spivak calls a concession. You know, we're talking about it that way for now, but that's really not the way it is, right? And then further down in the understanding, further down in the teaching, we then say, well, all there is consciousness and awareness. And if that's the case, then the personality must be that. So the awareness and consciousness manifest in a form. So you have no form and form. You have no form and form. That's a perfect balance. You have no form and form. And when you see it that way, then you understand, oh, I don't have to think that there's something wrong with being the personality, right? It may not really exist. It may be a program that's running that that I learned, right? And thought that that's what I was, right? But now I have a whole new view of it in which I can realize that I am being the personality. I am the awareness being the personality, right? So it's not different from me. It's not strange, right? But since now I have the balance, since now I know my foundation, since now I know that the ground of being is the foundation for what it manifests as the personality, right? That allows me now to take responsibility for the personality and allows me now to have the personality begin to reflect the balanced state. Has the personality begin to reflect the balanced state? Because now that I can see that the awareness and the personality are the same thing. This wasn't even here before, but now I can see they're the same thing. Now the personality starts to naturally be affected by the awareness. The personality stops being crazy because it's being affected by the truth now, not beliefs, not just what you were exposed to in terms of your conditioning, but the truth. It's being related to from the truth, and because it's related to from the truth, right, it starts to express its true nature as the awareness, which is unconditional love. So gradually you start to, as a personality, gradually you start to see the truth in terms of what it means to love somebody. Gradually you begin to be able to express that in a realistic way, instead of thinking that it's only at Christmas time and you spend all your money on people and that's how you express your love. You begin to understand the way you express your love is in relationship to everything all the time. You know, when you know your true nature, you love everything all the time because everything all the time is consciousness manifesting itself in form. So to resist it or to negate it or to fight with it or be in conflict with it or think that it's separate from you is ignorance. It's just naive. It's just naive. And it's not anybody's fault because that is something that we've all innocently gotten involved with, didn't we? Innocently gotten involved with, right? But the situation is a situation in which you've got 8 billion people involved with the wrong reality. And that's why the situation is what it is. That's why the world is the way it is. That's why there's so much conflict. That's why in that misunderstanding about reality, it makes sense to kill each other. In that understanding about reality, it is actually logical and makes sense to kill each other. In the truth, killing each other is insane. It makes no sense at all because there is no other. If you're awake and you're experiencing things as they are, to kill another person is equal to suicide. You're killing yourself. There is no other person. So this is what we're up to here. This is what the ancient teachings, this is what wisdom is. Wisdom, the definition of wisdom is self-knowledge. The definition of wisdom is experiencing things as they actually are. Then you're wise, right? Then you're wise. And that wisdom it allows a natural process to occur in which the truth of what you are begins to show up and express itself. You begin to lose interest in being what you're not. You begin to lose interest in the idea that there's anything that you need to defend, or there's anything you need to control, or there's anything you need to protect. You begin to lose interest in that. That's what the 8 verses of training the mind are all about. Your 8 verses of training the mind are saying if you want to train your mind, right, train it to express the truth, which means that you should never feel that you have to protect yourself as a person. You should never feel that you have to be right about anything. You should be willing to let that go right away because that's irrelevant to the truth. But if you read the 8 verses of training the mind, and by the way, for those of you who are watching this on a video, you can Google that and find them on the internet. The 8 verses of training the mind is a chant, and the chant is details about what it would be like to be who you really are in relationship to other people. That's basically what it is. And that's training your mind to get away from operating as if survival is the most important thing, and training your mind to operate in a way that unconditional love becomes the most important thing, and therefore you're not willing to be in conflict with anybody or anything. Okay. Questions?
Could you repeat the 3 steps that you gave in the beginning about accessing awareness? Before the meditation, you mentioned 3 different steps.
Yeah, that's just breaking down the formal practice a little more by saying when you go to do formal practice, and a lot of teachers don't break it down this way. I don't know why. But if you go to formal practice, you want to have a posture, right, that you can sit with your back straight, your feet flat on the floor if you're sitting in a chair, preferably to sit on a cushion on the floor, but it's fine to sit in a chair, right? But when you're doing the formal practice, what we're doing basically is you start out you start out in the way that you typically are, which is that you're thinking, right? This is the way you live, you're thinking. You start out by moving your attention. Attention is a very powerful power. Moving your attention away from the thought activity and putting your attention on the belly, the dantian, the center of energy in the belly. Putting your attention on the belly and watch the body breathing. So that's the first step, moving your attention away from thinking. Step 2 is to watch the body breathing. Step 3 is to notice the awareness that's watching the body breathing. That's step 3. Watching the body breathing allows certain things to occur. 1, it starts to become noticeable that you're not the body, because you can't, if you're watching the body breathing, you must not be the body. So that gives you a direct experience of that truth. And then if you take the next step, noticing the awareness of the body breathing, the body's breathing in the present moment, so that anchors you to the present moment. And then the awareness of the body breathing allows you to notice that without thinking, you're still here, but you're not still here as a personality, you're here now as awareness itself. So the distinction of awareness itself appears, and you can begin to apply the conceptual understandings you have by knowing, as the conceptual understandings are telling us, this is your nature. This is you. This is not something you have, this is what you are. And so you're practicing this in formal meditation, And then eventually you want to begin to take what you're witnessing in formal meditation and bring it into your life, your everyday life. So that you can, in your everyday life, through practicing in your everyday life, by remembering yourself as many times during the day as you can, you'll eventually complete the transformation. Eventually the transcendental experience will occur, and that will become your natural way of being in your life. All right? Any other questions? Okay,
So,
see if...
real quick, when upset occurs, you're basically out of balance. You've identified with personality.
See, but that's what the practice is that I've been introducing here today. It's said under all circumstances, right? So that doesn't mean only when you're not upset. Under all circumstances. You can be in physical pain. You can be in the middle of a conversation with somebody. You can be driving your car. The awareness is always there during all that, right? So all you're doing is as you get better at it, meaning that you do it more and more often, right? You can start to see, you know, that even in the middle of upset, you can rest as awareness, aware of the upset. See, part of what this is bringing to the forefront is there's a clear distinction between awareness and what's happening. We identify with what's happening, 100%. Now this is saying no, practice experiencing the awareness of what's happening instead of what's happening. That's what we mean when we say rest as the awareness. It's always there, but we're so used to identifying with what's happening, whatever it is, whether it's feeling good or feeling bad, or no matter what it is, we're so used to identifying with that, you know, that the awareness, because it's formless, right? Because it's formless, right? We don't distinguish it. But without it, there would be nothing. So that's an important point that you're making. You know, when I say, you know, rest as the awareness and repeat this as many times as you can every day, right? I'm not talking about to do it only under certain circumstances. In fact, it's probably even more important to do it when you're upset. Right? Because if you do it when you're upset, you'll have a view of the upset instead of being the upset. And if you have a view of the upset instead of being the upset, then you have some say-so about what's going on. But if you're being the upset, you have nothing to say about it. It's running you 100%. Right? Okay?